Most histories of the Korean War focus on troop movements, massive artillery barrages, or the political deadlock at the 38th parallel. What rarely makes the headlines is how something as mundane as timber and the way it was maintained or neglected directly affected survival, combat readiness, and the durability of field positions. Entire encampments, supply depots, and defensive fortifications were compromised, not by enemy fire, but by the slow decay of untreated wood in the harsh Korean climate. Few modern builders or military historians realize that the lessons in outdoor timber preservation from that era remain relevant, whether for understanding past operational failures or for practical survival and construction today. If you are committed to serious historical insight and want to understand both the human and structural side of wartime endurance, subscribe now. This isn't a story about dramatic charges or heroic last stands. It's about the systems, decisions, and oversights that quietly shaped outcomes and the survival of those stationed in the field. The Korean Peninsula's climate turned wood into a constant hazard. The first thing many overlook is the climate. Korea presents a challenging combination of high humidity in summer, sub-zero winters, and rapid seasonal transitions. Timber structures, barracks, observation posts, ammo storage sheds were often erected quickly, using locally sourced pine, oak, and fir. Soldiers and engineers understood the need for speed, but few considered that untreated or poorly seasoned wood, exposed to rain, snow, or melting frost, would rot, warp, or develop fungal infestations in a matter of months. Historical records from the United States Eighth Army show that by late 1951, over 30% of forward outposts experienced structural failures simply due to timber deterioration. Roofs sagged under snow floors warped, and supply crates just disintegrated. Troops had to improvise, often reinforcing positions with sandbags or salvaging materials from abandoned posts. These small, avoidable failures consumed manpower, diverted attention from tactical priorities, and, in some cases, forced units to abandon strategically important locations. As we look back, it's clear that these patterns of decay weren't isolated incidents. The records reveal a consistent neglect of preservation techniques, and, well, this neglect ultimately contributed to a cycle of repair and abandonment that drained resources and morale alike. Commanders often ignored basic timber preservation techniques. Engineers in the field knew of simple methods to extend timber life, such as soaking in creosote or applying heat-treated linseed oil. But, these treatments were rarely implemented. The reasons were practical. Supply lines were stretched, chemical treatments were scarce, and the urgency of combat outweighed long-term maintenance. Yet when officers ignored these measures, they were not merely postponing convenience. They were creating structural liabilities that could compromise safety and mission integrity. One documented instance involved a series of observation posts along the Imjin River in early 1952. The posts were constructed from untreated pine beams and, exposed to weeks of heavy rain. Within 6 months, rot had progressed to the point that some posts could no longer support lookout platforms. Troops improvised by doubling beams and propping with sandbags, but this really slowed rotation, increased fatigue, and limited the ability to maintain consistent surveillance, a critical failure in a contested area. Survival and human endurance were directly affected by construction choices. The decay of timber didn't just threaten buildings, it threatened the people within them. In winter months, floors warped and created tripping hazards, while roofs leaking through snow and ice left soldiers exposed to freezing temperatures. Field diaries from the 1st Cavalry Division describe frostbite and hypothermia cases that were indirectly linked to structural inadequacies. Soldiers who could have been in top operational condition were forced to conserve energy and repair structures instead of focusing on patrols or combat readiness. These challenges also informed later military doctrine. Lessons learned in Korea contributed to the U.S. Army's cold weather construction guidelines in the 1960s, emphasizing pre-treated lumber, elevated flooring to avoid ground moisture, and careful sealing of roofs. The knowledge existed during the war, but it was underutilized in real time, demonstrating the tension between immediate tactical needs and long-term logistical foresight. Local timber resources were abundant, but not always appropriate. Korean forests offered ample timber, but, the suitability of species for outdoor construction was pretty uneven. Pine, while abundant, was soft and prone to rapid decay when untreated. Oak and fir were harder, but slower to cut and transport. Engineers often selected based on availability rather than longevity, which, honestly, exacerbated maintenance issues. Modern survivalists can learn from this. Knowing the properties of local wood, its density, moisture tolerance, and susceptibility to fungi, can determine whether a structure will last months or years. In Korea, using faster-growing pine meant repairs every few months, while using harder species could have reduced labor and improved durability. Historical procurement records show that logistical expediency often overrode material science, a decision with lasting consequences on soldier welfare and operational stability. Simple preservation measures were historically proven but underused. Several treatments were available in the 1950s that could have dramatically extended timber life. Creosote, a coal tar derivative, repels insects and inhibits fungal growth. Linseed oil, applied hot, penetrates wood fibers and prevents moisture absorption. Even simple charring of exterior surfaces, a technique practiced in Japan for centuries, could have slowed decay. Field reports from British and Commonwealth forces in Korea note that posts treated with creosote or oil lasted significantly longer than untreated ones, often surviving 2 to 3 seasons without major structural failure. These successes were localized and rare, often dependent on individual initiative rather than institutional procedure. Modern builders ignore these techniques at their peril, particularly in climates with heavy precipitation and freezing winters. The lessons survive in modern military and civilian construction. The overlooked stories of timber decay in the Korean War have practical relevance even today. Military engineers, survivalists, and honestly, even homeowners constructing outdoor structures face the same environmental pressures. The principles are timeless. Know your wood, treat it appropriately, and consider long-term exposure before committing labor and resources. Korea teaches that failing to do so doesn't just reduce efficiency, it actually endangers the people relying on those structures. How these lessons shaped post-Korean War doctrines is, quite fascinating. After the war, engineers codified outdoor timber protection strategies into manuals for military bases in cold or humid climates. Elevated flooring, pre-treated lumber, sealed joints, and periodic inspections became standard. Similarly, humanitarian construction in post-war Korea emphasized durable materials in refugee shelters, showing how wartime lessons extended into civilian applications. These changes might seem minor, but they represent a rare instance where operational failures directly informed both safety standards and doctrine. Survival, preparedness, and historical insight are, really, deeply intertwined. Understanding these construction lessons isn't just academic. For survivalists, engineers, and historical reenactors, the Korean experience offers a concrete framework for planning. Knowing which wood lasts, how to apply treatments, and how environmental extremes accelerate decay can prevent unnecessary hardship, conserve labor, and increase resilience. In the field, these small decisions compound over time, affecting not just comfort, but survival. The Korean War reminds us that human endurance and structural integrity are inseparable in conflict. Soldiers survived under extreme stress not only through courage, but through the choices engineers made, or, failed to make, regarding basic construction materials. Overlooked lessons about timber longevity, moisture management, and exposure reflect broader truths about warfare. That success often hinges on anticipating decay, maintaining readiness, and investing in small preventive measures long before crises occur. Why remembering these stories matters today is, honestly, more important than most people realize. By examining the seemingly mundane realities of outdoor timber decay in Korea, we gain a more nuanced view of the war and the people who endured it. These narratives challenge the common focus on battles and strategies, emphasizing instead the everyday material conditions that dictated soldier welfare, operational capability, and strategic outcomes. They demonstrate that history is not only shaped by decisions made in command rooms, but also by the quality of wood, the application of oil, and the foresight of engineers in the field. For modern viewers, understanding these overlooked stories enriches our appreciation of survival, planning, and historical cause and effect. Lessons from Korea's timber structures apply far beyond military history. They inform construction, emergency preparedness, and even civilian architecture in harsh climates. If you value deep, careful analysis of history that uncovers practical and often ignored insights, subscribe to History Vault. And share this video with others who want to understand the war beyond its headlines and learn how the past informs the present. These lessons endure not just in documents, but in the wood, the tools, and the decisions that shape human resilience across generations.